This tutorial is brought to you by Hey, what's up guys? My name is Josh Enobakhare and welcome to Olufemi Tutorials. Hey, what's up guys? We're now going to talk about exporting. Exporting allows, it basically gives you the ability to spit out a single file after you're done editing your entire project. So what we got to do is we got to first tell Premiere Pro what part of the timeline that we want to export. We're gonna do that with in and out points. So I'm gonna put one in and out point right here at the beginning of the video. Then I'm gonna put another in and out point at the very end of the video. What I want to do though is I want to make sure that my playhead sticks to the very end, and I do that by holding down Shift. As you can see, when I held down Shift, I was able the playhead became sticky and stuck to the end of the track once the playhead got close to it. So I now know that my playhead is at the very end of this track, and I know that my playhead is at the very beginning of this track, so that I can put my in and out points at the very beginning and at the very end. So I've told Premiere exactly what part of the timeline that I want to export, and now I'm going to go to export. I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to go to Export, Media, and there we go. Now here's our main export screen. Now it's important that we export using the right settings, or using the settings that we'd prefer anyway. So if we are just exporting something for YouTube, we want to make sure that our codec that we use, which we pick here, we want to make sure that the codec that we use compresses our file enough so that the file size is small enough for us to be able to upload on the internet. But we don't want to compress it so much that the video quality goes down significantly, because the more you compress any type of video footage, the quality will decrease, and yet the size will get smaller. It's interesting because we always want as high quality as we want, but we don't want a file size that's too large. So luckily it's made simple for us, because there's a codec called H.264 that gives us that happy medium between video quality and video size. So it compresses your videos to the perfect, it compresses the videos to the perfect amount. Another thing before I even go on, if you guys don't know this already, if you are going to compress using H.264, you don't want to put the same file that you export out back into Premiere and then export it again, because that's called recompressing. If you recompress an H.264 file another time, your video quality is going to decrease significantly, and it's not going to look good. So what you want to do, if say you think you may have to give this file to some TV network or some place where they're going to want to take your file and then recompress it before it's shown to people, then you're going to want to actually give them an uncompressed file. There are many options, and one option is using an AVI codec, which is basically AVI actually is not a codec. There is really no codec that's being used, because the file is not being compressed at all. If you've guessed it already though, using an uncompressed export setting, meaning you don't have any codec to compress your file, means that your video quality is going to be amazing. Yet, yes, the file size is going to be very large, extremely large. So what that does though is it allows, say MTV, if you're giving them a music video, to take that uncompressed file, put it back in whatever video editor software they use, maybe adjust audio levels, maybe, who knows, add some color correction, or do whatever that they like to do, and then export it again, probably using H.264, and then the file is going to look fine because it's only being compressed one time when they export it out using H.264 with an H.264 codec. Cool. So sorry for the long-winded answer. I just thought it was important that you guys understood that. So we are only going to export this out once. So we're going to use the H.264 codec. Now, what we're going to do is we could go in and just say match source, which is what we did. We selected a preset. You have all these different presets you can select. I usually don't use that. If you know that your sequence settings are the same settings that you'd like your export settings to be. So say your sequence was 1920 by 1080, which is HD, and your sequence was 24 frames per second, aka 23.976 frames per second. Then you can just do match source, and your export settings will mirror your sequence settings. That makes it really easy, and most of the time I can just do that because I've set my sequence settings correctly. If you remember from a previous video, your sequence settings should always match your clip settings. So I know that I shot 1920 by 1080, so I set my sequence to be at 1920 by 1080, and therefore my export settings are going to be the same, 1920 by 1080. And again, I shot it at 24 frames per second. Okay, so say for some reason you don't want your export settings to be 1920 by 1080. You want it to be something else. Maybe you want to make it smaller and make it 1280 by 720. You can uncheck this and simply change it to whatever you'd like. But I don't want to change it. So I'm going to go back to match source, and it matches my source, my sequence settings again. And it changed it back. Okay, you can do the same thing. You can change your frame rate to whatever you want if you uncheck that. But of course, you want to leave this the same. Cool. One thing that you want to make sure is that you always have your aspect ratio, which is what that stands for. You always want it to be square pixels. You're never going to really want it, for the most part, to be anything but square pixels. That's basically it, guys, as far as exporting goes. As far as audio goes, I usually leave all these settings to be the default settings. I don't usually have to change these. These default settings are usually the settings you'd want for an upload to YouTube. So don't even worry about that. I would not add any effects during the exporting process. Any effects that I'd add, I would make sure I added them on my timeline before I got to this page. Cool. I literally only focus on the video tab when I'm exporting. Alright guys, one thing I forgot to mention here. Up here in the output name, you always want to click on this, and you always want to make sure that you are telling Premiere where you want to actually export the file. So say I want to export the file in this one folder right here, maybe on my desktop. Okay, so I'll say save, and I'll go back to that screen. You got to name this file. I'm gonna I named it show small for whatever reason, and I of course I'm saving it on my desktop, so I'm gonna do save. And so I know that this file is now saved on my desktop. And now guys, we are ready to export. So you click export, and there we go. Thanks for watching.